Welcome to a new Zeta report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live and we are joined by Nancy Leader from ZetaTalk.com. Nancy, are you there?
Oh, I am, and I'm so happy to be back. And we're doing something a little bit different this hour because
Mhm.
we've addressed various survival tactics like, oh, eat bugs and, oh, make windmills out of car parts and, get your vitamins from nature. And that we're beating a dead horse just to pick that up and repeat it. But I noticed there's so many articles that show really what can happen in cities or in where people think, I've got my water, I've got my electricity, my food is being delivered, the gas and the oil, and then all of a sudden there's a disaster. They don't think disasters are going to hit them. And these,
Right.
I noticed there's been several things in the news that indicate how that can happen, and also gives us a chance to talk a little bit about what to do if you still haven't woken up and you're living in the city and these kind of disasters hit, what to do about it. But before we get rolling here, I want to talk our disclaimer. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. Questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. Well, as I mentioned, so many news articles have been popping up, and it occurred to me that this was like a subliminal preparation of the populace. We still don't have an admission that Nibiru exists. Certainly not an
Nope.
official admission. We have talk about the end times. We have talk about exoplanets. We have talk, but it isn't out there in such a way people say, well, until somebody in officialdom says it's real and it's going to make a passage, and then they can't get their family engaged. They can't get everybody packing boxes and off to Uncle Bob's farm. None of that happens. But I think we're being subliminally prepared because, as the Zetas have said, over half the populace of the world, we're talking 7 billion people plus, is currently chatting with aliens on spaceships. They know, at least in their subconscious. Okay, speaking to the subconscious, what's going on? So, are we people being nudged to brace themselves and prepare? When droughts and deluge and wildfires increase, tent cities proliferate, and the weather wobbles are extreme, what's the reaction? What's the reaction in the populace? Even with much of the news suppressed, the news that is covered is carrying a message to the public. Here's what you can expect. Are you ready? Let's have some examples. South Africa is used to city water. Johannesburg, they have tourists down there and, jumping in and out of the ocean, blah, blah, blah. What if the taps ran dry? It's one thing to live in a desert and be used to the restrictions, but having composting toilets, etc., that don't require a flush. But this was not the case in Johannesburg, South Africa. They don't have a desalinator handy, and they're not prepared to harvest fog from the ocean nearby. And suddenly the tap is shut off. Oh, guess what, folks? That happened. An intractable drought has been gripping South Africa, of all places, for some years, but no one has paid attention. This kind of thing never happened to them before, and a light bulb never went on, and no plans were made, and all of a sudden they have no water, no drinking water, no nothing, nada. Okay, here's articles, quotes, Daily Mail, UK Daily Mail. Cape Town may be the world's first major city to run dry. The prospect that large sections of South Africa's showcase city, famously perched near two oceans, might go without running water has induced anxiety as well as resolve among its nearly 4 million residents. Taps would continue to run to hospitals and provisions could be made for schools, some of which can pump water from boreholes. Tourism authorities urge them to flush the toilet as little as possible. Oh, that should be great for tourism, eh? Okay, California drought. California periodically has water restrictions, recently worsened with the years 2006 to 2017 being listed as drought years. Intractable. California deals with the fact of being a desert by bringing water down from the mountains as snow melt to supplement the little collected from rain during the winter raining season. California cities such as LA could indeed go suddenly dry despite being right on the ocean. But do they harvest the fog? Do they have desalinators? Nope. How to prepare for this? We at USAEBN were visiting the issue of clean water many times during the September 2015 show in particular, and again in October 2017. Assume no clean water, or even that water itself will be available. If you already have water, boil to remove parasites and germs by a distillation process. A quick fix is a drop of bleach or filtering the water, but these items run out. Desalinators. You are likely to be surrounded by salty water or polluted water. Water can be desalinated by condensation on a piece of plastic placed over a bowl using the heat of sunlight to vaporize water in the ground nearby. And we have diagrams, and the YouTube that I'm going to be putting up and that I have in the past in September 2015 and October 2017 shows how you make this clever device so that, the heat evaporates from salt water in the soaked sand and then collects and drips down into the bowl, which is placed in the sand, and there you are. You have drinkable water. Fog harvest is similar, putting up a sheet that will collect droplets of water from fog. In some desert countries, like I think up in Chile or Peru, they do this. They put up a sheet, and in comes the fog, and it collects and drips down and runs along the bottom edge and into a container. And this is not salt water. It's not polluted water. It's not been on the ground, except and it's perfectly drinkable. All right. California
Nancy?
fires. Yeah.
Just a quick, the desalination process that they have is desalination is basically just distilling, right? I mean, there's other processes too where they push it at a high pressure through multiple filters to get the salt separated from the water and the other particles. But distillation is the best way that we've recommended that you can do at home. One thing about Cape Town that I did some research on over the weekend, they do have a major desalination plant in Cape Town, South Africa, that is up and running and has been running for all of these years that they've been ticking down. I think they're scheduled to run out of water in April in Cape Town.
Yes.
Well, the desalination plant that they're running, all of the clean water that they're producing is being sold to Saudi Arabia. All of it.
No.
And it's on contract to go to Saudi Arabia. So they have this major desalination plant down in Cape Town, and all of the proceeds or all of the product that they're producing from that plant is being shipped to Saudi Arabia. Now, these are contracts and things of that nature that governments make. I get that part. But wouldn't you want to take care of your people first? I mean, you're going to run out of water, and you have a desalination plant, and you're selling the water. That blows my mind. I don't understand why people make decisions like that.
Well, they didn't think that this day would ever come. They honestly didn't. They've never had that in their past. It's like new, and it's like. And that's why I bring this out, is that you will be taken by surprise. Now, we're talking about like apparently an intractable drought, or who knows what goes on under the ground, that they can't get the rivers have run dry and the wells are coming up dry and all that, and they're not used to this and didn't expect it. But what city doesn't expect to turn the tap and have something come out? And
Right.
it's just, oh well, I can go buy bottled water, except that's all used up, and now what? And people do not think about this. They don't expect it. They don't expect the grid to go down. They don't expect the tap to not run. The tap can stop running if there's a broken water main, and that can happen because of earthquakes, and the water mains break,
Right.
and the water goes everywhere, but there's no water pressure, and there you are. So these are things that you should think about and be prepared for. If you're in the city and there's no water anywhere, you can recycle. People can recycle their urine, but the main thing is, you should be braced for this and not be taken by surprise. And that's
Right.
the first thing you should give up. I think is not showering all the time, or not flushing your toilet, and simple things like that. I mean, so everybody is a little more fragrant, So what? Drinking water is, you've got to have that. Let's put it that way,
Right.
Okay, California fires. Now, California regularly has wildfires. They have a rainy season in the winter, and then the summer is the dry season, and oh, Lord, here it goes. And it roars around, but there are places close to the coast where they do not have fires. They never have them. It's very close to the ocean. Rich people live there, and they have lush vegetation because there's enough fog coming off the ocean or whatever that they don't have the wildfires there, but now we've had this last year, in December of 2017, the elite areas along the coastline north of LA in Ventura County were burning, and the vineyards in Marin County up north of San Francisco earlier. The fires were so hot, in these areas that had never had them. They burned cars and tires and melted metal. And people, there was wild speculation that maybe it wasn't even caused by the heat and the Santa Ana winds, the dry winds and the like, that maybe there was some strange satellite up above that was zapping these fire, because it had never happened before in those particular areas. So what I'm saying here is that even the wealthy, living right on the ocean where they get the lovely fog, oh dear, everything's burning. You got to be braced for this kind of, the unexpected. Okay, now we've had odd fires in odd places before that we have covered here on the Zeta Report and USA EBN. Disaster fires that cannot be extinguished were discussed on March 7th, 2016. Examples are burning houses surrounded by water during the Red River flooding in 1997. Water everywhere, and not a drop to pump up and put a house out, and there they go. So you get a fire going, and the pumps don't work because either the water main has been broken or the electricity is down, and you can't put that fire out. Earthquakes regularly burn the whole darn city down. In 1906, when they had that big San Francisco fire, the huge fires that burned and took practically the whole city down, that was because they couldn't get the pumps up to them. They couldn't get the water up there. So, and then the smallest spark can set things off. Okay. So assume all flammable materials are vulnerable during a disaster, and stay upwind or out in the open. I mean, do not be sitting, in your wooden house, surrounded by wooden houses everywhere and saying, "Oh, I'm okay." You're not. You're in danger. Okay, another example was during Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Once again, the rule about fires raging out of control during floods proved true. A fire at Breezy Point in Queens was sparked by trees coming down on wires, transformers blowing up, and the water and the wires going into the water. It just takes lightning is another one that can set it off, but any kind of electrical fires can start up. The biggest example was along the New Jersey coastline in 2012, where an entire neighborhood was aflame. It takes but a spark. Live wires are particularly dangerous near water, electrocution almost certain. Stay high and dry. So if there's a disaster, you have to anticipate. The lines are going to go, fires everywhere. Okay, what to do in this kind of a situation? I did a little research on this, something that I don't think that we've addressed before, Andre, of what to do if you have a fire and you have handy fire extinguisher. Oh, it's used up, right? Or you throw a blanket on it, or what do you do? There's a rule of thumb called the triangle of fires. It at base it is cutting off the fire's oxygen supply, or dropping the heat of the fire below the combustion point, or shutting off or removing whatever is fueling the fire. It's called the fire triangle: heat, fuel, and oxygen. Anything that smothers because you're cutting off the oxygen, that's why they throw a blanket over or roll a burning person on the ground. You're trying to smother that fire. Or foam is cutting off the oxygen. A kitchen trick is to use baking soda or some sort of powder. I actually used the baking soda one time. I had a fire pan, and all of a sudden, 1.5 feet, 18 inches, 2 feet, wall of fire or something. I don't know what happened, but it was grease. And I remembered that rule and grabbed my baking soda, threw it on there, boom, out. And then I could put the cap on. Well, I couldn't put the frying pan cap on without, setting myself on fire practically, So water will cool the fire, and that's why it's used, because it brings the temperature down. But avoid putting water on electrical fires due to the electrocution worries.
Yep.
Right.
Or grease fires.
Grease fires.
A grease fire, you add water to that, it's bad. Yeah, because I work in a kitchen, and when you add water to a oil fire or a grease fire, it atomizes the oil into the air, and it makes more of a your pillar of flame is going to turn into a cloud of flame. It just makes it worse. So baking soda or just getting rid of the oxygen altogether. But don't use water on electrical fires, or if you have a fire in your kitchen, don't use baking soda is the best word for that.
Yeah, that worked. That worked, and I was glad that I just, you idly read these articles in Reader's Digest or whatever, and it was something I'm glad I had come across it. Okay, forest fires. Huge outdoor fires like wildfires or a burning blaze building are another thing. Firefighters dump plane loads of water or smothering material or start backburns to remove the fuel from the path. In other words, they do a small fire in the path of the flame wherever the wind is blowing it, and then by the time the fire gets to that point, it says, "Oh, I have no fuel," and it just settles down. Somebody comes with a shovel and whacks the cinders, and it's out. But a private individual can best stay downwind from the fire. In other words, if the wind is blowing the fire in your direction, don't just say, "Oh, isn't that pretty?" They are pretty. They're lovely orange and yellow colors, but and just as quickly, a fire can move fast. They jump. The spark is up in the air and then blows in the wind and lands, and boom. It's like, how did it go boom, to boom, to boom across the hills like that? That's how the wind blows the sparks. If no escape is possible, then laying low on a floor to escape smoke and hot gases is the trick. I think, don't they advise that you should be on the floor because the smoke will rise up, and if you're up, you're coughing and choking, and you pass out or whatever, or go into a swimming pool. And the reason this sticks in my mind is that about 20 years ago they had an Oakland fire, and this was during a time when I was in San Francisco with my then husband, and it was all wooden shingle roofs over there in Oakland, and the only houses that didn't burn were those that had tile roofs or slate, I think
Hmm.
they called them. All the wooden, but it was I mean, they had eucalyptus trees which smell wonderful and they're very pretty, but they're, boy, what a torch, right? And so dry season eucalyptus, and now I think they cut them all down and they don't let people plant them. But people jumped into their swimming pools and flames, you know, coming across, the whole house burned to a cinder, all the trees going up, and they don't have. They were just fine because they were in the pool, and they would duck down and get wet and stay under as much as they could and till the fire passed. And so you can do things like that, and I would think that you could also duck into a culvert under a road. Getting out of the way of the fire is will save your life. So remember that. Okay, being without electricity. Good example, dear old Puerto Rico, where people went to retire, where people go to be in resorts, where people go to frolic on the beaches and all that, and they still don't have their electricity back. Hurricane Maria blew through Puerto Rico in September of 2017. Most of Puerto Rico is still dark. The grid is down, damaged, with finger pointing in every direction. Over half the populace of the world lives in cities, and they routinely expect the grid to work like it's a divine right. You're going to lose this. You're going to lose it during an earthquake or for many other reasons, but you have to anticipate that. You have to say, okay, we've got little candles, we've got batteries for our flashlights, and then you run out. And that's what's going on in Puerto Rico. They're all sitting in the dark, or maybe they got a little candle, Quoting the Chicago Tribune, Puerto Ricans say officials didn't prepare for the hurricane and didn't activate a mutual aid agreement with power companies on the U.S. mainland quickly enough. Well, you can always finger point and all that, and they never thought this would happen. They never thought it would be that bad. And we had a bunch of hurricanes that came slamming through in 2017, slamming through the Caribbean, etc. Now, making your own electricity is something that we have stressed here on USA EBN and the Zeta Report. Disasters on the world will increasingly take out the power grid. The solution? Prepare to light and heat your world by other means. One can use car batteries until they run out, but the long-term solution is to use the alternators from cars or power tools to gen electricity from windmills and water mills. You can also have a bike gen that works, but you get kind of tired, but wind and water are going to be with you. Water, moving water, even torrential rain coming down the drains, or if you have what they call high head, where you live next to a hill and, you get some drop, in the elevation, and you don't have to have a huge water mill as big as a house. You can have something little. There is a very clever man in California, longtime fan, who put something together with little Tupperwares, so that it becomes a mini water mill. I mean, little chipmunks could ride in those things, but they turn. And then he had an alternator from a drill, and son of a gun, his lights went on. It doesn't take much. And there's diagrams, on my website. You can find that stuff, and you can find us also on the March 2015 show, in which we took a look at this, genning electricity. Lawnmowers, you can put those together from almost anything. Okay, let me quote from that March 2015 show what I described. Direct current, reversed alternators in cars, and electric tools, wind and water always available, windmill types, lawnmower windmills from car parts, steam engines, bike gen and crank appliances, wood gas and methane, solar panels, carbon arc lamps when the light bulbs are gone. Now let me tell you, carbon arc is something else that, people say, well, okay, but what about the light bulbs? Well, LED lights last a long, long time, but you don't get much bright light out of that. You want bright light? carbon arc. You can even use the leads in pencils. And if there's a little bit of a gap between them and you run a direct current, which comes off of the windmill, and by the way, camping and car parts work with direct current, then you have light that is full spectrum like sunlight. So you can have hydroponics in your basement, and believe me, if you have a red wiggler worm bed and you drain water through there, you've got your hydroponic solution. We did that. We tested it. It works. And I personally counted every blossom and seed, to find out if it was equivalent, and it is, to the commercial hydroponic fluid. Okay, so you're down there with your little carbon arc, light, and wear your sunglasses because this is sunlight. It's UV. You can, get cataract damages just like you can looking at the sun, the real sun. Okay. Nebraska windmill. This is a clever device if you've never seen it, and I'll have a diagram on today's YouTube. Also, back there in March 2015, we had diagrams. It's basically that instead of sticking something going round and around up on a tower, you have it at ground level, and you have to worry about cows and kids and dogs. So they put a little fence around. They dig a hole in the ground, and what you see is the part of the windmill that's flapping up above ground and then goes down again, and it works. Easy maintenance. You don't have to climb up the tower to do something. In case of a real windstorm, you probably aren't going to have any damage, but they have this little fence around to keep the kids, the dogs, and the cows from falling into the hole. That's the Nebraska windmill. You may live in a city, not off the grid in the country somewhere, but give yourself the tools you're going to need. Get some printouts of these things. So, you say, well, wait a minute, I think I have a piece of paper that shows how these things are constructed. You may be considered a hero when the time comes. Even those wrecked or parked but out of gas will have an alternator in the car. The cars, if you don't have fuel and you're going to run out of gas at some point, it just won't be distributed. Or there will be a break in the pipelines and it'll all burn. And, so, well, at some point, it'll all return and then we'll be, well, good luck. In the meantime, while you're waiting, you can have windmills and get those alternators going. And you have a lot of handymen, that can cobble this together if you have a diagram. Okay. Sweden. Why was Sweden in the news? And what is the subliminal message? Yes, they were. They were recently in the news because they reissued a civil defense booklet that had last been issued after World War II ended. How many years ago? Well, not 100, but more than 50. They gave no reason for the reissue, but the title says, "If crisis or war comes, what crisis?" And the booklet even warns against disinformation from the media. That was a surprise. Don't believe everything you hear, right? Quoting CNN, the leaflets, which will be published later this year, aim to educate Swedes on how to prepare in case their world gets turned upside down. CNN actually said their world gets turned upside down. And ask municipal regions to get ready. Previous Cold War bunkers. Well, one of the things they showed in a few pictures from that booklet is wood stoves. Well, Sweden has wood. They're up there in the cold climate, but they have little pine trees all over the place, And if your oil and gas are cut off, here's what you do. You crank up the old wood stove or the fireplace. How to stay warm. The aspect of survival, such as boiling water for 10 minutes to kill pathogens, was featured. Staying warm by wood-burning stoves staying warm has many practical solutions, by the way, such as sleeping on manure, which generates heat while it rots. This is something that, who would think that? Unless you're on a farm, you wouldn't know this. We drove into town today, and I noticed because it was down to 20 below briefly in the middle of the night. And there were all, the Angus cattle on one of our farms, and they have like a wind shelter. 3 sides, is walls and a low roof, and then one side open where the wind does not whisk in. And they were all crammed in there, sleeping on the manure. I knew what they were doing. Okay, the stove, an aspect of survival such as boiling water 10 minutes. Sharing body heat is another one. People cuddle up in bed. My cat certainly knows that trick. She and I keep each other warm all night long. Okay, wood gas. Finland, right next door, still has wood chip-fueled cars, a design used during World War II when gasoline was rationed. Wood gas was also touched on during the March 2015 USABEBN show, where we talked about, what to do when the electricity runs out. We have the original designs for converting a petrol car to a wood chip car on the Troubled Times pages. And these are housed on every Zeta Talk website, of which there are 15 mirror sites. So you can go and print them off. Some of this stuff, just have it on paper. Roll it up, tuck it away, and, when push comes to shove, you can get that tractor out, churning your garden over, even if you have no more diesel, this type of thing. And then there's also the whole bit about using veggie oils, to burn. And it's called, I can't remember the technical term, but not just wood chips.
Biofuel?
But biofuel, methane. Methane generated from rotting whatever, too. I did an hour-long discussion with somebody way back in 2005, 2006, and it was all about how to get methane. He had this 5-gallon tub, and he put in manure and rotting whatever, right? And then he had and it would collect. And then he had a little spigot, and he had a kind of a tube coming out, going over nearby to his gas grill or gas burner stove, and he would turn it on and light the methane that was coming out, cook himself his dinner, and then turn it back off and let it accumulate again. You can do this also with a composting toilet, but the trick about methane is don't be casual. This is natural gas, in one of its forms, and it can explode, so you shouldn't just be careless about it. Treat it with respect. All right, what else has been in the news? Let's see. We had Cape Town ran out of water, and the California, elite coastline above L.A., was burning until the cars melted, and Marin County also, and then Puerto Rico out of electricity, and they're all sitting around, with a battery. You have this poor little girl, and she's got this flashlight battery, and she's just sitting there with the flashlight on the floor, so she won't be sitting in the dark. It brings it home. Okay, tent cities. That's been in the news a lot, and the kind of chaos that can develop, like hepatitis A and C, because nobody has a toilet, and so they just go in the sidewalk, and then whatever, somehow, because you don't wash your hands because there's no place to wash up, there goes the hepatitis, Okay, San Diego and L.A., to where, quoting the American magazine, Southern California as a whole finds itself in the midst of a homeless emergency. A survey last December conducted by the Downtown San Diego Partnership discovered that the homeless population in downtown San Diego had nearly doubled in 4 years. In Los Angeles County, homelessness has soared 23% over the last year. So, tent cities, on the sidewalks, everywhere, and sleeping in cars. For a while it was sleeping in cars. For a while it's, getting an RV because your home has been foreclosed, so now you have an old RV, and you go around from campground to campground or wherever you can park or in somebody's yard or, and so it's increasing. and it's in the news more. What to do, how to prepare for this. If your family is a victim of flooding or hurricane and rescue is not coming, what to do? Temporary tents were addressed early on USA ABN shows in September of 2015, as was the phenomenon of tiny portable houses, which is another thing that's proliferating in the news. This is a subliminal message to you folks. They're telling you, this is what you do. Get ready. Here's what's next. Having a tarp of tents among your supplies is a big advantage, as these things can be carried along and set up in a safe area. A tarp can become a tent. You just string a rope from tree to tree, for instance, and there you have your tent. But tents work too, except they usually come with more clanging poles and whatever. So a tarp is multi-purpose, let's put it that way. The tiny portable houses are often in the news, which is a subliminal message. Get one of these, build one, use it as your vacation home, hitch it behind your car. This is what's stressed in these articles. Oh, look, he built one in our backyard, and isn't it cute? And now we just, like a U-Haul in the back of the car, and off we go. And we don't have to set up a tent. We'll just pop in, and we've got bunk beds and a little tiny sink in there where we can wash up. And, tiny portable homes have the advantage of having some sort of toilet built in and a stash of clean water, drinking water usually. Then they collect water as they empty their toilet, presumably. Plus, they can be moved to highland, to rural land, or where one can garden, either after a disaster or ahead of time, in the nick of time. So this is something. Tiny houses and tent cities, this is a subliminal message to you that this kind of a problem is inching towards you. Houseboats is another big solution, right in step with tiny houses, is tiny houseboat living, which has adopted the term minimalist. You know how you had preppers? Well, now we have minimalists. If you're enthusiastic about tiny houses and tiny houseboats, you're a minimalist. This allows a subliminal push for tiny living quarters to avoid the touchy subject of Nibiru, because what is a prepper preparing for? They're always like in a bunker, something's coming down from the skies. So they're trying to get you into your subconscious and speak subliminally to your subconscious without terrifying you and saying, Nibiru is real. Houseboat living is cheaper than living on land, and the houseboat is portable. It can be moved. This was covered extensively in the December 2015 USA EBN show. Quoting Country Living, a lot of people look at tinies and they think they're really neat and novel and kind of cute. That's the idea. You're supposed to fall in love and build one because you might need it tomorrow. All right, junk. My favorite houseboat is a junk houseboat, built from trash at hand and being inventive for flotation devices. This was also well covered in the December 2015 USA EBN show, as flotation devices are anything that will hold water. Basically, hold water or hold air. Where plastic bottles, well-caulked boxes along the side of the houseboat or under the houseboat. You can build these boxes yourself. Rowboats lashed together will float. Be resourceful. People know, tubing. When my son was a teenager and we lived in Atlanta, they used to go down the Chattahoochee River, tubing, with a big inner tube, and all that cooler water on a hot day. It was wonderful. Do container gardening on the boat deck to grow tomatoes and amaranth, or fish from your houseboat. Eat kelp and seaweed. This is such a one. It's also romantic to me. I must have lived on a houseboat in one of my past lives, because I look at that and the fog. I think, must have been. Seasteading is another term being tossed around, not for the poor, but for the wealthy. This is out there. We hear about the wealthy's bunkers, the wealthy bunkers, and now we hear about the wealthy seasteading. And it's sort of like, they have a buttress, big circle around a collection of floating condos and resorts where you can come in if you're wealthy with your yacht and tie up on a dock and then go back out. Presumably the seastead keeps out the sharks, but I'm not sure that it does, but presumably. Houseboats are communities for the poor, and tiny homes as living in general is in the news, but seasteading is much for the wealthy. I mean, they show you the yachts and the resorts. And the message, the wealthy are getting ready for something here. What is it they're getting ready for? That's a subliminal message. Why do the wealthy feel they must do this? Since you can't afford any of this, then what will you do? Wealthy bunkers were the subject of discussion here on USAEBN in February 2017. But they never have enough food to get by beyond a week. They have like,
everybody stocks up on bullets.
Yeah, that's kind of stuff. And they think they're going to walk back out and everything will be fine. So impractical. But it shows you the mindset of the elite, that they are preparing for something, but they think they can walk right back out and you'll just be at their beck and call because you're at their beck and call now. They have money. Let me tell you, money isn't going to be worth anything. Bitcoins are plunging right now, and the Dow. You can get these financial stuff can inflate and then just poof, gone. If you can't eat it in the future, and it doesn't do something like mend your clothes or put a fish hook at the end of a line, it's not going to be worth anything. Money, gold, silver, things that are going to be worth gardening tools, seed, skill sets. You have baby chicks. You know how to take care of your brooding hen, to make all those little eggs hatch and grow into more chickens. And these are things that are going to have work. Needle and thread, to mend clothing. You know how to knit? Do you know how to spin yarn? So your neighbor has a sheep, and what about this pile of yarn? Do you know how to card it, spin it, and knit it into a big wool blanket? Well, those are skill sets, and we have that covered. If you check down the Zeta report and listen to past shows, we've gone through all that ad nauseum. The Daily Wobble is in the news. It's been addressed on so many USAEBN shows, but here it was. An exclusive topic was in August 2016, where we went into the why and wherefore. So that's one of the past shows you can go to really get drenched in this information. Even those in the public who have never heard the term are beginning to wonder when in December 2017, Canada and the northeast of U.S. was in the grip of a severe and record-breaking cold, while Europe and Russia were melting. And I mean to tell you, Siberia said, oh my God, everything's out there melting. I mean, I hear from these people, I know. And the same thing with Europe. It was like... And then you go and look at the heat maps. There it is, from northern Canada, Saskatchewan, down through Wisconsin, unfortunately, over to New England. It was like, it would never get above zero. It was like 20 below, and oh my God, I can't, So then you go to Europe, or even Alaska. There they were jogging in Alaska in 44 Fahrenheit weather, etc. Now, what was that all about? So now you might have people that are unaware. They might catch an article saying, "Oh, they're jogging in 44-degree weather. How come I have 20 below here?" And how come they may piece it together, but a lot of people don't pay attention and put disparate things together. But if you hear about these things, it is a subliminal message that there's something going on. Why is the earth wobbling like this? Why are we having, another ice age in part of the globe, and the opposite is happening, right nearby, where it shouldn't be? We're on the same latitude. Okay. The movie The Day After Tomorrow showed how to prepare for these types of temperature swings. Be aware how people around the globe survive in disparate temperatures, because you may suddenly find your temperature different. People live in the Arctic, they live on the equator, they live in desert regions, and they live in swamps. So you're used to living where you are. But what if you have a change? That's what the message is here. In these cold zones, know that protecting exposed skin so frostbite does not occur, that matters. And to prevent your water pipes from freezing, you dribble a faucet. I did here in Wisconsin. Evaporating perspiration is key to keeping cool in the heat, so wear light clothing and stay in the breeze. Get educated. Be familiar with how other people live. We've covered that. In November 2017, we identified how some movies prepare the public for these changes, such as The Day After Tomorrow. Well, I'm talked out, folks, and I'm trying to think what we missed.
All right.
Basically, I'm trying to point out that these are news articles, and when I was reading them this past month, I said, wait a minute, this is another subliminal message to the public. And I'm sure that you can think of others, perhaps, Andre, but it's happening every day.
Yeah. Just with the weather and the fires and all of those natural disasters that we're talking about, and some of the things that we can reference for our listeners that they can prepare themselves for, no water, massive flooding, no house, that sort of thing. You can go through back our episodes, but I think that what we're dealing with in the actual mainstream media, I think there are some good folks behind the scenes that are dropping seeds of information about possibly the Wobble or the two sun or the exoplanets. Newsweek has been doing an interesting series of space anomalies and UFOs and things of that nature throughout basically the past 6 or 8 months, dropping little hints. And this is my own opinion, but I think that some of these things are being placed in the media to seed the subconscious as that, like you said, that subliminal message. Hey, something's coming. Hey, look at this. Oh, yeah, that's not normal.
Yes, exactly right.
So
and they don't get as they're not saying Nibiru is real, but the Daily Mail had something about when the poles flip, what might happen.
Right.
And of course they don't flip. I mean, this is something that's been thrown out there as a diversion from talking about Nibiru, that say, well, every once in a while, for we don't know why, they just go whoop and flip. But that's not true. The crust slips. And it's the crustal slips that have caused wandering poles and ice ages and that type of thing. And it's very well documented in the geology of the Earth. But this thing about, but at least they talk about the compass maybe not being right. I'm going back through some of our past, and just because we referenced these shows, September 7th, 2015, Survival Tips Overview, Naked and Afraid Level, Civilization Has Been Lost, Starting Fires by Rubbing Things Together, Clean Drinking Water, Desalination, Eating Bugs and Worms, Fish Hooks, Eating Predators, like kill the bear before it kills you, Eating Rats and Squirrels, Weeds for Vitamins, Mushroom Safeties, they're not all safe to eat, get a book, Seaweed versus algae. Seaweed is good. Algae can be, you can have red algae, and it's poisonous, so you have to educate yourself. Get a book. Duckweed, it's wonderful. You can make protein powder out of it. Kudzu is a pea plant, and the whole thing is edible. Even the tubers, tent cities, temporary houses, bamboo houses. Bamboo is a wonderful construction device, and you don't have to have a chainsaw to cut it up either. Bermed homes, how to insulate, heat, hand tools, and houseboat flotation. Growing Power, which was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Guy started that, And basically in the inner cities, he brings in a little soil, and he's got gardening going, and they have earthworms, and they're making soil, and they're making their own fertilizer through the earthworms, and then they grow all this stuff, and now they sell the produce nearby, and it has become Uncle Bob's farm. And it's just wonderful. And he's done consulting all over the place, all right, city gardens, hydroponics. So that's an example of how 1 hour long, the type of thing that we covered. Okay, then we have December of 2015 houseboats. Be a modern-day Noah, theory of buoyancy. Plastic bottles and inner tubes, bamboo, and lightweight wood. Homemade plans available by buildahouseboat.com. Rohingyas are a desperation example, kicked out of the country over there in Burma, and Bangladesh doesn't want them back, and there they sit in the boat like a rowboat. Nothing to drink, babies in arms. It's just horrible. Houseboat community examples. You lash them together, and then you share your produce, and you keep each other company, and have sing-alongs, presumably. Mangrove Island example. Operation Atlantis is an example. Junk houseboats, freedom ship for the wealthy. I think that was on the Seaway up here. Or maybe New York City. Waterworld as a movie that has a lot of lessons. Sinking land history, because we are going to have a lot of flooding land during the pole shift. In the opinion of the Zetas, this is going to happen. Duckweed and seaweed are available if you're in a houseboat. Solar, wind, and water power. And then I wrote a chapter on the Finnegan Fine story, which I just had so much fun with that. He runs a houseboat up and down rivers, and he is bartering with people, well, I've got this and you need that, and then he gets produce from people for that. And meanwhile, all these after the pole shift examples of what goes on, Okay, and then we have January 2016, Vitamins in Nature. I was particularly proud of this hour because it was talking about specifically what the vitamin deficiency diseases are. And sometimes the wealthy do themselves in. Like they have bleached flour, and there goes all the B vitamins, and then they have horrible deficiency diseases. Scurvy, beriberi, pellagra, rickets caused by deficiencies, and if you don't have vitamin pills or fresh fruits and vegetables, let me tell you, you can eat bugs and weeds, and you will be just fine. And I get specific during this hour. A lot of weeds are very high in vitamin C, and the bugs provide vitamin B. So be aware of what your options are, and don't say, well, we're out of vitamins, I guess. Oh, the kids are bleeding from the mouth. Oh, you don't have to do that, We had dangers in living in floodwaters on March 2016. We revisited Katrina, the Crocs. Electrocution is one, of course, polluted water. And they get these horrible, the sewage is in the water. And water snakes are all over the place, So that's a lot of lessons to be learned from visiting prior floods, floodwaters, etc., and what can go wrong and what you should do about it. March 2016. All right, model communities, we did that on May 2016. And Daily Wobble, that was August 2016. How it started up after 2004. This is measurable, by the way. I had a team of people worldwide that would measure the azimuth and the altitude and the time of sunrise and sunset, and all over the world. And what I saw was that if you were above the North Pole looking down, it was a figure 8. This way and that way, over this way and that way. And lean to the left, lean to the right, pull down, bounce up. And that still holds today. Figure 8 Inuit, right. The Inuit in the Arctic observed, that they were seeing the sun too long. You could see that in Alaska on the FAA cams. That it was wrong. The jet stream started twisting. Coriolis effect is in there, but it was beyond that. So anyway, going through all the proofs at that time, August 20, and now it's gotten worse, and how
We've
the
had
cover,
some.
yeah,
We've had some recent Zeta talk in regard to the Wobble. I think it was referenced in this week's chat back to the previous chat. The question was there a major lean due to December 28th Wonderground.com article and a bigwobble.org article about, is this the major lean where the Wobble switches from regular, well, not regular, to severe, I guess. And there was some Zeta talk on that.
People are very worried about this because you can have Wobble, it's like a tsunami, Wobble sloshing. And from the start, the Zetas have predicted that during the hour of the pole shift, when we have a crustal shift, a 90-degree crustal shift, this is in the opinion of the Zetas, so that the new North Pole becomes Brazil, which is zipped up there, and the new South Pole is India, which has pulled down. 500-foot tidal waves rolling in, so that you have to be 100 miles from the coast and 200 feet up to avoid the slosh. But severe wobbling will cause stuff too, and so that it's more than a high tide, and to worry about it, So they've detailed that wobble sloshing and pole shift sloshing, and it's all within Zeta talk. It's about half. I think the water sloshing is about half of the wobble sloshing is half the pole shift. Okay, mythical creatures on this traditional New Year, wealthy bunkers on this traditional New Year, wealthy bunkers, February 2017, preparing for the apocalypse. Articles in the press show the rising S bunkers in Texas, survival condo project in Kansas, seasteading off Tahiti, Texas billionaires buying up Idaho to escape to New Zealand. What could go wrong? What could go wrong for the wealthy? Mutiny. Why should their militias stand around guarding them when they could just take over and say, well, who's the new king of the hill, buddy? I am. I got the gun. You hired the wrong guy. So, why should they consider you the master? There will be takeovers, and the wealthy will not be in charge of their bunkers. Lack of a sustainable food supply. They never, in these things, it's ridiculous. We have 2 pineapple plants, and so don't worry. What?
Yeah.
How do you propagate the pineapple plant after you've eaten it, And they're trapped in their bunkers. It could be, the escalators and the elevators could be crunched. And now oh dear, and here comes the flooding. Why wouldn't it happen? And the poor will fare better on all fronts than the wealthy. That's it. So what else have we got? 5-year survival niche. There's many places. Well, after that, I started talking about Nibiru a lot. How the movies can help you. The Hobbit houses show you cabbage. They live in tidal cities, where the fishing is real handy. There are tree houses like Swiss Family Robinson. You go up in the trees, and then if you have the waves washing in, well, not to worry. And they do this regularly in Asia. They have pole houses. And I've seen some built down in Florida that way because, okay, we have a hurricane. I'm not going to be washed away. I'm living on a pole. And presumably they survive. The Amish barn raising in the witness, and you can see the hand tools working, and the cooperation. Everybody gets up there and raises that wall, and they do it in a day. 20 people take the day off and go and do that and socialize at lunch and chit-chat. Waterworld shows floating cities. Star Wars has natural leaders emerging, which will happen, and recycling junk galore. Never throw the junk away. Always figure out how to use it. Huck Finn rafting. The castaway makes a raft, and he gets rescued. Making fire and spearfishing was shown in Castaway. Quest for Fire is another good one, where they're off trying to find a tree that was struck by lightning because they were out of fire. And they encounter, another group, caveman days, that know about the rubbing sticks together and says, "Oh, it's so easy." So it's interesting movie anyway. It's fun to watch. Hunger Games, they eat squirrels, hunt by bow and arrow. You know, the Scully leadership when he landed on the river, and he was told to do this and do that, and he said, I'm following my own good head, and every single person on the airplane was rescued. You know, because he knew when to stand up and do the right thing. The Revenant is another one. If you can't stand being attacked by a grizzly or the thought of it, don't watch that movie. But the guy was just a pit bull. He was going to make it back. He had a broken leg and all ripped up, and he made it. You know, ate a lot of seeds in weeds and things like that. You know, was not he would have loved to have had a gun and shoot the goose on the lake, but it didn't happen. He didn't have a gun, so they showed him eating grass seed, actually, is what, you know, saved him. The 33, about being underground in Chile, The Will to Live, none of them panicked. They parsed out their food, and they all got brought up. At 2 months they were down there. Nobody gave up. You know, just determination. San Andreas Earth Changes, the 2012 crustal shift, and Cover Up Lies. They did an excellent job on that, the Cover Up Lies. Twister is a tornado survival, get down in trenches. Hidalgo was eating locusts. You know, the Arab princess said, it is a blessing, it is not a curse. So if you have a locust swarm coming, you know, eat them. And they did, and it made a big difference. Inferno, how to avoid cities. The day after tomorrow is migration. It started early. Don't wait. That's what they did. They waited. Everybody waited. The establishment, and they had a Dick Cheney kind of guy who was Mr. Stupido in the White House, and he became the president. And he said, oh, I didn't do right here. I should have evacuated all of the USA down to Mexico, and I waited, and look how many people died. All right, we're past our hour, and I've wandered up through our previous shows, Andre, and I hope I got a lot of people interested in going back and listening to some of these hours, because it's a lot of detail that we just touched on. And you're getting these subliminal messages. Get ready. Get your print-offs. And even if you can't have a garden or free-ranging chickens or all this stuff, you will know how to do it. There you go.
You know what's interesting too, and very recently, as of yesterday, I'm sure you were glued to the television watching the Super Bowl last night, right, Nancy?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Not me.
No?
No.
Well,
no.
Me neither.
No, I'm
a
very serious person, and throwing a ball around does not sound like getting the populace ready for survival. You know, I'm sorry, but it
well,
just
what's
doesn't.
interesting
Anyway, yeah.
You know, as always on those things, the halftime show is kind of the thing that kind of grabs people. Well, it was Justin Timberlake again. However you feel about his music, he's done a bunch of halftime shows for the Super Bowl. But his new single, and I did a little research on this, his new single is called Supplies, and the video around it and the lyrics are all about the coming of, not apocalypse, but the coming disasters and how you should be prepared and you should get with your friends. And that's kind of, and that was featured on the Super Bowl halftime. And I looked at the lyrics for Supplies, and I'm like, is this dude a prepper? What's going on here? I'm sorry, a minimalist? So it's getting out there, little by little.
Well, now I have to go and check this out. Yes, I missed something. By being flippant about tossing a ball around, I missed it. And that's very significant. I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm not
sure
how
my leading story today, tonight, if I had known. I said, look at that subliminal messaging. Yes.
Well, I'll send you that, and I'll dig into it a little bit more and find out how exactly the lyrics go and if it's accurate as far as prepping. But all of these episodes that Nancy was referring to, you can find on the Zeta Talk YouTube channel. It's the Nancy Leader YouTube channel, and you just scroll down, and all of the titles for the videos are basically an hour-long videos. Most of the recent ones are USA EBN podcast with pictures along with it. A lot of graphics and pictures and things that will help you like what is a distillation. We have a photo and a diagram for that. The windmills, the Nebraska windmill, those sort of things. We put that onto the YouTube as well. We're kind of limited what we can do on the Blog Talk site. So Nancy is kind enough to upload the audio and then add photos and diagrams to the YouTube feed. So that's YouTube Nancy Leader channel, and you can always find Zeta Talk on zetatalk.com, as well as the sister site poleshift.ning.com.
Right, exactly right. You go to any zetatalk.com website, and it says New Zeta Talk on the left in the drop-down menu, and there it is, the New Zeta Talk produced like today, and the second one is interviews, and that has all that list, you know, and you click on the YouTube and away you go. So go for it, folks. Good talking to you again.
It's up to you.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, thanks for checking in. We need to get ready. That's what we're here for,
indeed.
to let everybody know that they need to get ready. Now it's the mainstream media is catching up to Nancy Leader and USA EBN, so that's good.
Yes. Yeah, you heard it.
We'll see how far that goes
here.
before it gets squashed. Right.
Well, this is great, and we have this huge archive of survival information. It's just wonderful. Okay, folks, have a good night. Thanks again, Andre.
Nancy.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye now.